So why do we need to go to church? I mean, do I have to go to church? I mean, isn't Jesus everywhere? Why do I have to go to church? Why do I have to go to a Catholic church? I mean, why can't I go to any other church, non-denominational church? I mean, they all preach Jesus. Aren't we all following Jesus, right? I mean, why do I need to go to church? Even Catholics come up and say, oh, I'm a Catholic. Yeah, I don't really go to church, you know. And I was thinking to myself, and I always ask, I go, then why did Jesus establish a church? Why did he feel the need to establish a church? I mean, was he bored? You know what? I'm going to start a church. No, I mean, he did it for a reason. And that reason alone is why the fact that Jesus established a church is reason enough that we should go to church. Now, if you're a Protestant and you're attending a church, you have to take into account, and it has to sink in, that you are attending a church that was not established by Jesus Christ. In Matthew 16:18, 15 through 18, that's where he talks about building a church. He goes, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. What you bind on earth is bound in heaven. What you loose on earth is loosed in heaven. So here we know it's a historical fact that Jesus established a church. Now, being that it's a historical fact, if your church doesn't go back 2,000 years, your church automatically is ruled out as the church that Jesus Christ established. So if you belong to any evangelical, any Protestant denomination, the oldest church is 500 years old, almost 500 years old, which is a Lutheran church. Most churches started in the last 20 years, 100 years, 150 years. So even the oldest Lutheran or oldest Protestant church is 1,500 years removed from the time that Jesus Christ established a church. So a lot of people say, well, the church that Jesus Christ established is not the Catholic Church. Well, it has to be the Catholic Church because the Catholic Church is 2,000 years old. And if the Catholic Church is not the church that Jesus Christ established, then where is it? It's not any Protestant denomination. They're 1,500 years removed from the days of Christ. And every single Protestant denomination was started by a guy, just some guy. If you're a Lutheran, they're started by Martin Luther. If you're a Calvinist, they're started by John Calvin. All the way down to the church that started 20 years ago. Some guy, a sinful human being, came and started a church. But it's not the church that Jesus Christ established. So you have to ask yourself and be honest with yourself. Do I belong to the church that Jesus himself established? And for that to even be possible, you have to belong to a church that's at least 2,000 years old. So a lot of people come and say, you know what, the Catholic Church is not that church. So we always ask, well, where is it? Well, it's not here. The church of the early church is not the Catholic Church today. Okay, if the church isn't here, if you can't find it, that means the gates of hell did prevail against the church. That verse is very powerful after he says, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church. The next verse is, and the gates of hell will not prevail against it. That is very, very important, because if the Catholic Church is not that church, that means that church is not around anymore, because where is it? And then that means the gates of hell did prevail against it. And that makes Jesus a false prophet. So all of us, every denomination, Catholic and every Protestant denomination, are worshiping a false prophet because the gates of hell did prevail against the church. So it has to be. For your sake as a Protestant, or for our sake as Catholics, it has to be that church, because otherwise Jesus was just some guy. He wasn't God, but he gave a false prophecy. So it's very important as a Christian to be honest with yourself and ask yourself, do I belong to the church that Jesus, not some guy, any guy, that Jesus himself established? And you have to, come on, we got to be honest with ourselves. If your church is 100 years old or was started 20 years ago, it's not that church. So that's step one. Stay tuned for the next audio clip.